Whoa. Today, for the first time ever, Bitcoin crossed above $10,000. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about what that means, analyze some of the trends, and give you some predictions for what I think is going to happen next. So if we take a look at coin market cap, and if you go to Bitcoin, you'll notice that the price is showing over $10,000 right now. And now what's interesting is it actually hit 10,000 on the Korean exchange first. And you can see that GDAX and Bitfinex are still shy of 10,000. This is the most insane bull market that I have ever seen in the past 15 years of being involved in the financial markets. It's just been an incredible year. And as you probably know by now, Bitcoin is up over 1,000% from the beginning of the year, where we started off around $1,000. And today we're up around $10,000. So just really, really incredible. And where a couple of years ago, people thought we were crazy, today everybody is buying in. And so what I want to do is show you the market structure from this year, meaning analyze the trend, what's happened, do a couple of measurements, and that'll help me show you what I think is going to happen next. So if we go back to where this trend actually began, just to put this into some perspective, back in 2015, Bitcoin was basically flat. It was around $200, which is pretty hard to believe for a lot of people that are new. But around this time, this was a great time to accumulate Bitcoin. But the problem is nobody really cared. There were so many Bitcoin obituaries. And then in November of 2015, so about 2 years ago, Bitcoin pumped from about $250 to $500 and then crashed very quickly. Now, this was kind of spurred by a Ponzi scheme, the MMM Ponzi scheme that a lot of you OGs might remember. But what happened from there is that put us into about a 6-month consolidation pattern where we gained about 50%, right? About a 50% range. And that lasted for a little over 200 days, right? And then what happened there? From there, that's where the trend really started to take off. We did another move, this time about a 70% move, moved up into the $800 range, and that lasted for a little bit less, right? It was still over 200 days, but about a week short of the prior market structure channel. And then from there, when we first went into 2017, price went above 1,000 for the first time since 2014. So that was a pretty big deal. And you'll notice right here at the time, this was actually a really big move, right? And I did a video right here after the price crashed. It was kind of a clickbaity title because I wanted a lot of people to see what was happening. And the video, I think, was titled, "Is Bitcoin Crashing?" And my message was essentially, guys, don't freak out. This is just the start of something. And I went on to analyze the 7 steps of a trend, and turns out the people that didn't freak out and held from this level now made a 10x return on their money. So pretty incredible. But that led us into just another market structure channel, this time again about 65%. So you'll notice every time the market breaks out into another trend, it typically goes up about 50 to 75%. And you'll notice this time though, where it was previously over 200 days each time, this was significantly less. That only lasted for about 120 days. And then things really got smoking in the spring here. And the next channel lasted for about 80 days. And that was just shy of a 60% move. And then when we first tested 5,000, that was a 65% gain, and that lasted for only 68 days or so. So you'll notice the times are getting compressed here. The gains percentage-wise are about the same, but the time is getting compressed. And then most recently, we saw a price go from 5 to 8,000, again, about a 60-something% gain, and that only lasted about 38 days. And then recently, over the past week or so, as we broke up above 8,000, you'll notice that if we do what the market has been doing, right? And again, I don't try to pick tops. I'm a bull until the trend is over. But if the market structure remains in this form and it keeps putting this pattern in, then that means if we're slicing the time by about half, that means over the next 2 to 3 weeks, if we put in a 50 to 60% gain, we could see prices anywhere in between 11 to 13,000, right? Somewhere in this range. On the low side, 11, on the higher side, 13,000. So right now, however, we have price action that's basically going parabolic, meaning it's just every day green after green after green. And eventually what's going to happen is that's going to become unsustainable, right? Like at some point, the market cycle is going to shift, and the market typically goes into 3 phases. Okay, this happens with stocks, this happens with all currencies, gold, any market or any stock or any financial instrument that has an early trend that eventually goes parabolic does this 3-phase pattern. The first phase is 3 phases in a long-term trend. The first phase is a strong trend where you get runs and retracements and you have that market structure that's very clear. And this has been the most beautiful bull market I've ever seen ever. And so what typically happens after that, though, is after the market takes the stairs up, it takes the elevator down. And in a fraction of the time that it took to make those gains, you typically see a big washout in between 50 to 75%. Now, some comment heroes might be going, oh, well, Chris is trying to pick a top or say for the end of Bitcoin. Guys, listen, I am bullish long-term on Bitcoin, but I realize that the market goes in cycles. And when things become unsustainable, you get these pullbacks. Case in point, as I talk about in some of my last videos, Bitcoin has had a half a dozen pullbacks this year of over 30%. When you think about that on a market cap or a dollar basis, that is billions of dollars in the course of 1 to 3 days that gets wiped out on these pullbacks. The difference with Bitcoin is, at least so far with this market structure, is every dip gets bought up because that's been what's working. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy until it stops working. And so what could happen is if we measure from the beginning of the year, which is really where things got smoking for this trend, if we measure just on a percentage basis, you'll notice that that is over 1,000% gain, right? And what happened is if we measure a fib retracement from the low to the high, I like to focus on what I call the sweet spot, which is in between the 38% retracement and the 61% retracement. So if we do get, and again, this is where the price is right now, you won't know where the top is until after the fact, until it shows the V top. So it could be much further up. This could be the top, but I think we have more to go. If we get a pullback, that's kind of the area that you would expect to see price land, right? And we saw that back in 2014, where when price went from 100 to over 1,000, you can see the first washout was a 3-day slide and bounced right there inside of that sweet spot. And then we actually got a secondary washout that tested the 78% retracement. And then the third phase, after you have the strong stepping trend that we've had for a full 2 years now, if we get a pullback inside of the sweet spot retracement zone, that's likely going to give some really good opportunity for maybe a bounce play, at least on a swing basis, like we saw in 2014, had a couple of really nice bounce plays. And what typically follows that is wild volatility, where you're going to see a battle, and where we've had just a really beautiful kind of straight trend for a couple of years now. I think, especially with Bitcoin CME futures coming out in the next week or two, that's going to add a whole new dynamic, because Wall Street is stepping into the Bitcoin sphere in a really big way with these futures contracts. And I think what that's going to do is add even more volatility into the next 6 to 12 months, even with the CME claiming that they're going to quote unquote tame Bitcoin and reduce the volatility. My guess is in the short term, it's actually going to increase the volatility. So I think that's going to be great for traders, and I think it's going to be something that people that are just chasing highs are going to have to contend with. With that said, guys, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm measuring these market structure patterns, and I think we are getting in that unsustainable territory. But that's why one of my last videos I said actually dips and crashes in the price are healthy for Bitcoin, because a market can't just go straight up. You need that selling pressure to refresh and get new money into a market. So I'm actually going to be doing a live market class this Thursday. It's kind of an interesting time where we have the CME futures about to launch. Here we are around this 10,000 price level. So anytime we get around like a major inflection point, I like to do live webinars to kind of talk about what's happening and hopefully catch some live market action and answer all your questions. So I'll link that up in the description. If you got some value from this video, throw me a thumbs up, share it with somebody that might get some value out of it, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take care.